So without more ado, so I'm from Staffordshire History Centre, if you haven't already realised that, and my job is I'm one of the archivists there, and my name's Rebecca, if you haven't caught that. So what we're going to do today, this evening, is have a look at how do you actually go about family history research at the Staffordshire History Centre, now that we're actually reopening after 2 years being closed. So I'm assuming that some of you have done quite a bit of family history research already. Is that fair to say? Yeah, okay. Can anybody remember researching their family history pre-internet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you that can, you'll know that in the old days, what you had to do any family history research would be to go to your local library or go to the archive. And that was basically, you couldn't do anything otherwise. You couldn't sit at home and do any family history research. So years ago, people naturally came to the archives and said, can I look at census or can I look at some parish registers? And then they'd come regularly, you'd get to know them, and you'd say, oh, have you ever thought of using this as well? Or you'd come across a problem, try having a look at this. And what's happened is that a lot of people starting off family history these days, they never actually go beyond the online resource. That could be something that uses this very often.
I used to,
I know. So I'm preaching to the converted, I'm sure. So what I want to do is show you how to get beyond what's online, assuming that you've all done a lot of the online family history already with census and characters. So I've always given you big news that we're actually open to the public just in a couple of weeks' time. We've been closed for over 2 years now. We did carry on working. We did lots of work on our collections. We carried on answering inquiries and did lots of copying and research. And we've got to the stage where we can actually open the doors again. Now, at the back, we've created, that's it being built, this is our new store. It's not very glamorous, but the thing that you need in that store is dark, cool, and no moisture. And that's what we've got in that rather, you know, it's not meant to look pretty, that bit. And they're built, so they're ready in that sense, but the concrete and everything needs to dry out before you can put any vulnerable documents in. So they'll be ready in about 4 to 6 months, I would think. As well as the actual archive bit, which some of you will be familiar with, we've now got this new exhibition area as you come in the front door. You might have a bit of difficulty visualising where that is if you've been to Stafford before, but it blew me away when I first saw it, so I think you'll be impressed. And we've also done some renovation work on the William Salt Library, which houses the county's local history collection. And we discovered this beautiful old 18th century wallpaper behind some of these bookcases. So those have now been renovated, and a section of the wallpaper is still left open for people to see. And that was very exciting work for our conservator, but that's how you conserve the Lisa there. She doesn't like having a face photograph, she doesn't mind that. And this is the walkway undercover from the William Salt Library through into the exhibition space. So that whole area is joined up together now. So, family history and the archive service. So, you probably know that Staffordshire Record Office or Staffordshire Archive is at the History Centre. What you might not know, for those of you with family in the north of the county, is there's a city archive in Stoke as well. And that has recently been closed and recently moved too. And that's now in the Potteries Museum and Art Gallery, if any of you have been there, in the basement right next to a cafe, which is very fancy. We have a job to do as an archive service. And I think if you read this, I won't read it out to you, you'll see that this is just what family history does. And everybody that comes to the History Centre, whatever their research, everybody is treated the same level of importance. And that's because it's our job to connect people with Staffordshire past. The archive collections of Staffordshire, I don't know whether you know this, but about 10 years ago, it was actually designated as an outstanding collection of national and international importance. The international bit is because we've got records relating to the American War of Independence in one of the big family and estate collections, where one of them was the last governor, the Earl of Dartmouth, was the last governor of America. And we've also got in Stoke the amazing collections of all the pottery companies like Linton and Royal Dalton. And again, that makes it of international importance. Of national importance because we've got an outstanding collection of all sorts of organisations from across Staffordshire, so that our collections stand out as being a really good, outstanding county collection. That's quite unusual for a county to get that designation award. So we need to be really proud of our archives. So, what have we got for family history though? Well, we've got the records of parish churches. You'll be aware of baptism, marriage and burial registers, but there are other kinds of records kept by parishes in the past, which I'm going to show you now, but not everything is online. We've got the records of Lichfield Diocese, so that includes things like wills, which again are online, but it also includes things like the presentments made by church wardens to the bishop reporting on the conduct of the people in the parish. And I was looking at one from Nosal yesterday. You'll know that Nosal is a den of iniquity. And if you had a look at this little presentment from the church warden, and it listed 6 people. First 3 were Popish recusants. So in other words, they were Catholics, which is terrible. And then the next 3 were held up for fornication. And I'll leave to your imagination what they were getting up to. So you get all these little reports on individuals in the village, and you can find out who was getting up to what. And it's quite interesting if your mind runs in that direction. So we've got records of schools in the county as well. So that's things like admission registers. So that's helpful to family history. If your relatives were poor, and let's face it, most of us, if you go back far enough, you'll find that there are records of the workhouses. And then, as well as the C of E, of course, you then get non-conformist records. So records of the Wesleyan Methodists, the Primitive Methodists, Congregationalists, the Baptists, the Independents, you name it. Lots of different types of church. Then you've got the records of the courts. So if your relatives were before the magistrates for any reason, then you find them listed there. And it's amazing. I mean, unless you're just tracing one very distinct line, if you're tracing all your family lines, you're bound to come across somebody that ends up in court, I can tell you. And then you've got records of the police forces, records of the police themselves, their personnel registers, and records of people that they arrest. Then you've got records of the hospitals. Here in Burntwood, of course, there was St Matthew's, started off as one of the county asylums. We've got records of all the patients there, as well as the staff. And then electoral registers, you know, that you fill in an electoral registration form every year or so. And we've got the electoral registers of the county as well, going back to 1832. So, lots and lots to look at. And I'm going to take you through some of those and how you can find out more. So, basically, there are 3 levels at which you can access our collection. So, By My Past, we've got the Staffordshire collection, which is baptisms, marriages, burials, etc. And you can see those original documents online, so you don't have to move from your own home. The next level is the Staffordshire Name Indexes website, which has indexes to all different sorts of records. That's some of the ones I've just listed. So you can see the index online and think, oh, that's one of my ancestors, or that's probably one of my ancestors. Then you can come into the archives, you can order that document, you can look at it, take the detail from it. Yes, that's my ancestor. Oh, no, it's not. That's the full trail. there's always lots of those in family history. And then finally, there are those collections which are not indexed in any way, they're not digitized in any way, but might well have some useful information. And you find those by looking at our online catalogue, which is called Gateway to the Past. I'll take you through those later. So going back to Find My Past, the collections include Staffordshire baptisms, Staffordshire burials, marriages and banns of marriage. Then this rather daunting looking little collection, Diocese of Lichfield and Coventry marriage allegations and bonds. If you haven't come across those, they're basically just the documents that you needed in order to get a marriage licence. So some people were married by licence instead of by band, and you get those documents that the bishop gave to you in order for you to have a licence, you know, things that you have to sign. Paperwork.
Would that be any religious denomination?
Well, in this period, well, it's only C of E.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but up until 1837, you had to be married in the C of E church. So up to 1837, any religious denomination, but they have to be married in a C of E church. Then wills and probate documents up to 1860. So you probably know that before 1860, it was the bishop's court that proved the will. So all the wills for Staffordshire prior to 1860 are held with us in the Lichfield Diocese collection. And they've all been digitised and they're all on Find My Past. So all of these are on Find My Past. However, there are gaps and we'll come on to those. So going to the Staffordshire name indexes, that's my second level of online access. I don't know how many of these you can read, but this is a list of about 20 indexes for different types of records. So that first one there, that's the apprentices index. And one of our volunteers, a lady called Diana Grant, don't know if you've come across her. She basically spent years and years going through all the parish collections, looking for apprentice records, and then index them, and they're now online search. So if there's an apprentice record for one of your relations that survives, you'll find it on that index. Then we've got a database of the asylum patients from 1818 through to 1920. So again, that will give you a document reference, and you'll say, oh yes, that's my ancestor. Then you can come into the record office and you can look at their case note. And I really recommend you have a browse of those. Even if your ancestor isn't from this county, it's quite interesting to have a browse of the indexes and see what kind of documents might be available. Oh, so definitely have a look at those. Helen, I can send you a list of some of these websites later on, which you can perhaps circulate. Yeah. And then this is our online catalogue. You can just put in a quick search term up here. So you just put in burnt wood up here, and you'd probably get about 1,600 hits or something, which would be very helpful. Or you can go to advanced search and narrow your search down, and I'll show you how to do that as we go through. So this is a page from the parish register. It's from Madeley in North Staffordshire. I've chosen that because that's where I come from. And it's a page from August and September 1737. So this parish register is on Find My Past, and you can look at this online in the comfort of your own home. Just be aware though that Find My Past doesn't have registers after 1900, and it doesn't have non-conformist registers. So for example, this one, marriage register, mid-20th century, and it's from Burntwood, C of E Church. And that you would have to come into the record office to see, because it hasn't been digitised and it's not on Find My Past. You're welcome to have a look at that later. And then this one here is Chase Terrace Wesleyan, I think. And again, it's non-conformist. So it's not on Find My Past. You'd have to come to the record office to read that marriage register.
And if it was in a different county, would you have to go to the record office of that county?
You would,
Oh,
yeah,
Right.
yeah. The alternative, of course, is to pay for a civil marriage certificate, which will give
Yeah.
exactly the same
Yeah.
information, but then you have to pay for everyone you want. Whereas if you come into us, then you just look at it and it's free.
Right.
So it's worth doing.
If you go in and you look at that, can you take a photograph of it? Is that allowed?
Yes, you can. Although we do charge for the photography permit for a day, so you need to balance up whether it was worth your while to do that. Okay. So there are 3 or 4 interesting things about this page. I don't know whether anybody's been quietly reading this for themselves, or whether you can see right at the back. You probably can't, can you? Can you? Yeah. So here we've got the baptism of Joseph, the proposed son of dash, 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 don't know the first name, Stuart, and Mary Fletcher. He's baptised on the 17th of September 1737. Now, this is quite interesting, because I looked up Joseph Fletcher on Find My Past and found, yes, there's a baptism of Joseph Fletcher, doesn't mention Stuart at all. So if you look at the original page, for some people, they just look at the index or the transcript, don't they? But if you look at the actual original, you pick up this extra detail, definitely worth doing. And here you find his mother's burial just a few days earlier, Mary Fletcher, alias Stuart. So in other words, sounds like the couple are living together, doesn't it? And she's taken on his surname as an alias, but the people in the parish know her and they know she's not married to him. So that's quite an interesting one. This one's quite an interesting one as well. You've got burial of Thomas Shaw, a travelling man. Yeah, just keep that in your head for now. And then at the top, you've got the burial of Thomas, so that's the abbreviation for Thomas Webb of the Almshouse. Now that sent little bells ringing in my head. And I thought, I wonder if there's anything more in any of the other parish records. So what I did was, oh, come on. How's that not working? Apologies, people on Zoom. There we go. Yeah, so what I did is I had a search on the catalogue and I had a look at the records for All Saints Madeley, and I burrowed down, and I found this, the Churchwardens and Overseers account book. Have you come across overseers before? Overseers are the overseers of the poor. So in those days, each parish had to deal with their own poor and were responsible for them. So you had an overseer who collected money and used that money to pay for the relief of the poor. So there's an account book for the overseers. So I thought, okay, let's see. We know it's 1737 that Thomas Webb died. Let's have a look and see if he's mentioned. And sure enough, this is August 1837. And you've got to Mary Lightfoot for looking to Thomas Webb, and she's paid 6 shillings. That's just hidden behind my title. So I think by that stage he said, and she's been paid for laying him out. Yeah. And then you look down a bit, and then you got for ale at Thomas Webb's funeral.
Wait.
Shilling and 6pence. Yeah, so the poor relief is paying for that too. Now they wouldn't pay for every pauper to have funeral ale. I suspect that it might be one of the privileges for somebody who managed to get an almshouse. So I'm not sure about that, but I think that's probably the case. And then if you go down a bit, remember the travelling man?
Yeah.
It doesn't name him, but we know his name from the parish register. And so this is spent on them that carried him to church. So 2 shillings paid out for that. And then for his coffin, that's 6 shillings. And then you have a look at this little note in the margin. That's the money received from the man's cloth, etc. And you got 13 shillings and twopence. Now, I added up the expenses that they pay out on the travelling man. It comes to 10 shillings and sixpence. They're selling his cloth and stuff for 13 shillings and a couple of pennies. They've made a profit on him. Whether he left a forwarding address, I don't know. And whether his family saw the rest of the money, I don't know. I suspect it went into the parish coffers and probably paid for the ale at Thomas Webb's funeral, but who knows? However, I then had a look and thought, well, is there anything for Burntwood? And yes, Burntwood Christ Church, Church of England. It's got overseers of the poor. We've got general accounts, got settlement information, bastardy bonds, apprenticeship records. There's loads. If anybody wanted to do a project on this, or maybe somebody already has for Burntwood, there's lots of material. So you've got this, for example, which is the overseers of the accounts, the overseers accounts. And it lists people in Burntwood who are getting weekly payments. Now, usually they're going to be people that are elderly, maybe can't work, but they might be people who are sick or have been injured or for whatever reason, or children who are orphans. And because you've got the names there and you've got a date and you've got the parish registers, you could probably do a bit of research and do some little biographies based on all of that. It'd be a fascinating little topic, I think. So do by all means have a look at that later. Can I just say though, this one, you be very careful, the spine is not in great condition. So if you do open it, you'll need to open it and support it with your hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you anything like that for literary?
Yes.
My 5 times, 6 times grandfather was
Yeah.
relieving officer.
Oh, yeah.
Lichfield Workhouse.
Yeah, yeah. There will be material for him then. Yeah,
William Hill.
yeah. It's definitely worth having a look at that. Isn't that writing beautiful, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah. 1808. Very good. So the other thing you notice here is settlement. So one of our volunteer projects at the moment, I was mentioning volunteers earlier, is to index what we call the settlement examinations. And these are when somebody came into a parish and it looked like they might be a charge on the parish, they were interviewed by the parish officials, by the overseers, and a note was taken down of what they said. And that settlement examination was used to find out, well, is Burntwood responsible for paying for them?
Yes.
Or is it somewhere else? In the hope, of course, that it's somewhere else. Yeah, exactly right. So the volunteers have been indexing these. So this is the original bundle. Burntwood, that's just my scrap of paper. And these are settlement certificates. So some of them are little potted biographies. Some of them very brief. Some of them are quite long. And they tell you what the people actually said about, my father was born in Burntwood and therefore I have a right to be in Burntwood even though I've been in Nottingham for 6 years or whatever. Or I'm a soldier, so I've been abroad for the last 20 years fighting in His Majesty's Army. But 25 years ago, I was resident here and therefore, you have to keep me up. So it's quite interesting. So this is just a list of the names. This is their ages. You can see that quite a lot of them are quite young, married people with families. So that one might well cost a lot, mightn't it? Yeah. So you can see why they might want to get rid of them. So one lady who was single, Sarah Jackson, was pregnant. Obviously, they want to know who the father is in case he doesn't live in Burntwood and he might, palm up the expense on him, and so on and so forth. And you have got a couple of soldiers there. So those are the interesting ones to read. And this tells you where they concluded that the people were legally settled, who was actually responsible for them. So you can see some of them are Burntwood. One of them's Lichfield, but there's some even Hales Owen. You have a look down, Walsall. Not many of them very far away, to be fair, but Newport. I'm assuming that's Newport, Shropshire, not Wales, but you never know. But again, you're welcome to have a look at those later on if you like.
Wow.
So when you talk about parish records, it's not just registers. There's so much more in a parish collection, and they're definitely worth exploring. Especially with some places like Hernwood, fun enough, which has got quite a lot. Some places you don't get that amount of records provided.